Welcome to the Heartwork podcast, where we delve into stories, struggles, and triumphs of entrepreneurship, leadership, and personal growth. I'm Dr. Sara.
And I'm Dr. Marisa. We're here to guide practitioners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and those just navigating the complexities of life on a journey of discovery that explores the dance between passion and strategy, heart and hustle.
With candid conversations, insightful interviews, and plenty of laughs, get ready to uncover how leading with heart can transform your business and life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Heartwork podcast. We are so excited because today we are going to talk about something that is not always fun to talk about when it comes to transitioning team out of your business or that are no longer going to be a part of your team. And so it's not always fun and it's not always the easiest conversations, but we think it's really important to chat about because the culture of your practice, like we have talked about, and the culture of your business is incredibly important. And people that are not honoring that or are not in alignment with that anymore, honestly, just don't need to be there. And so we also have talked about in the course of both of us, we have hired over 40 people in the course of our years of employment. I've been doing this now for 9 years. You've been doing this about to celebrate 2 years for Homestead.
Yeah. So I guess collectively like 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah. But obviously started a business, started another one, has had to navigate lots of team changes. And so it's wild because although we've hired over 40, those 40 are not in our employment. So we definitely have had some transition and some change. So it's even crazy when I think about it. The people that helped open my practice, which I'm so flipping grateful for them. They truly, truly, truly set the standard for our culture and who we are today. And they still all come get adjusted. I still am in relationship with them. They're all just beautiful. They're all, literally every single one of them, unless they have moved out of state, a couple of them moved out of Knoxville, are truly still in relationship with us. So I'm so grateful for that. However, literally even just the people that have helped open my practice are no longer with us. And so we've had to navigate lots of tension, lots of just relational changes and that type of stuff. And I know for me, so I've actually only had to let one person go physically where I was the one that was letting them go. The rest of them have all been more of a transition out, or it was just the right timing of them to be able to leave, or they took the initiative to basically resign themselves. And so very grateful for that. However, even when I look back on just where I was in my life, there were scenarios to where I kept somebody on longer because I was trying to caretake or mother them, and I cared more about how they were going to react or how they were going to respond than actually having the gumption and having the ownership to say, hey, this is just not the right fit and that right timing anymore for the purpose of your growth and what God has for you along with us. And so have learned a lot about that. That's literally, truly so many of these scenarios. I remember one person I kept on that was so freaking toxic, but it was just like, I was trying to help her out and all these types of things, almost trying to be her savior. And it just was not great. And so
what were some of those, what are some of the things that you start to notice break down where you're like, okay, I'm noticing this. I'm starting to feel that there is tension, there is toxicity. Mm-hmm. You're maybe in the early stages where maybe there's some chatter, or you and your leadership team are hearing it, but you're like, well, is this person actually a common denominator, or are these bigger culture points that we need to discuss as a whole team? And it's just being exposed, this one person or situation. What are some of those granular things you start to see that might be small pebbles, but they can very quickly snowball into larger issues?
So I think all of us can navigate and understand when something feels tense or when something feels like, man, I'm just running into energetically something that's just not great. And so whether we're super aware of it, I feel like I'm really aware of some energy. Sometimes I almost seek energy to be bad. And so I've had to, again, navigate that. But yeah, one of our biggest things that I will typically notice 100% is energy goes down, that they are only kind of putting in the bare minimum a little bit when it comes to navigating just productivity and their actual role and job. I will tend to hear chatter outside of if I give an instruction or if I give or if leadership team does, like, hey, we're going to be changing this, we're going to be doing this, they will say that they understand it, but then all of a sudden they go chatter and talk about how they don't like it, or something is not happening, or I don't approve of that. Why are we doing that? It's like a lot of that misalignment now of vision. They say something that is, they feel like they're in alignment, but now all of a sudden they're not behind closed doors. And so that's really clarifying, I think, even for us now. Like, we operate more on a no tolerance and lead through type of mentality, comparable to where I was before. Before, it was a lot of, I saw, again, it was a lot of gossip, a lot of like really, again, low energy, almost like pouty type of a like body language a little bit. And then just culturally, if we have a process now, like if we see that somebody is not in alignment, we're noticing that some of their energy is dropping, that they're not finishing projects. Like, we've had some check-ins with them. If they are not meeting those standards, like, and if once we've done our intensive with them, that if they're not going through that 30 to 90 day journey and they don't see that going, we know that that is a transition point where they're no longer a part of our office, because they're just not in alignment. And I'm not going to keep somebody along just for the sake of keeping them along. And so that train analogy that we've used before, it's like, you never know when somebody's going to get on or off or what that's going to happen. So that's some of the things that I've noticed. I'm sure you've noticed similar, but maybe you've noticed some other ones. What are some of those for you?
Yeah, I've had situations where, because I also have a smaller team. Mm-hmm. I've had smaller teams with both of my practice. We've just recently like kind of went from that 4 to 5 range to like 7 to 9 range now. Yeah. But one of the biggest things is you do start to pick up on that energy. And if you are already starting to sense something, that means it's probably been there for a minute. You're just starting to pay attention to it. Yeah. Or it's becoming large enough that it is emanating a little bit further to where it's reaching you. Because as a office that is more high love and busy, like, I don't really get to interact with my team on a day-to-day basis in the nitty-gritty. It's more through team trainings, it's more through huddles and things like that. So it's my team members that are really seeing that. So by the time I'm experiencing it personally with the team, like, I know it's already been happening. Mm-hmm. And I try and prevent situations like that from growing by doing the monthly one-on-ones and asking individual team members, like, how is the dynamic between the team? Like, are there any tension or sticky points? Are there any bigger things that we need to address? But sometimes it doesn't come up, or it's like a one-off situation. And so even if a team member like noticed something that wasn't the healthiest, they may have just offshot it as like this wasn't the best day, or like, yeah, we just addressed it between each other and that's it. But you get enough of those, then now it's a couple months and you see that process start to deteriorate. Mm-hmm. I've had team members where they've just had like personal health issues come up. And so they're just not as present and not as able to be engaged. Mm-hmm. But situations like that are a little less tense in the sense that like that team member kind of knows already, like, I'm not able to give my best. I'm looking to take a step back, or I need to take a sabbatical or a hiatus and like kind of transition out the practice. And one of the biggest things I've done and that I would recommend for anyone who has team under them, and sometimes it's dependent on your state, but like our state, like you can have at will employment. And so basically that means that for any reason, the employee and the employer can terminate the job or the contract, if you would, for whatever reason. Like if someone breathes wrong in my practice, I could say you're fired and not be like legally, tied to anything specific. Now that doesn't actually happen in our practice, but just to say, and that's actually protected me before, because I had a situation where I had recently hired someone, and this wasn't even 2 weeks later. And I was, another member of my team brought to my attention something that they found amiss. And so upon doing other digging, I found that this particular team member was in like complete violation of a specific rule in our handbook. And that made it easy for me to have to fire. But I also found out this information from someone else. And then I had to do some like video recon to see if this truly was a situation at hand. I can't go into too many details, but like there was probability of this person like taking things that weren't belonging to them. And so I actually had to contact like a employment business lawyer and like make sure that I was doing things by the book, because it was just a situation I had never been put in before. And fortunately, because it was so early on in their employment, that not only were we in like a training period still and not actually considered a full-fledged employee of Homestead, but because our contract said at will employment, all I had to do was just draft a letter, like stating what was going on and what we found, and that it wasn't in alignment with our team culture. It was in violation of our team handbook and stuff that they had agreed to upon the initial training period of employment. And I had to call it a day. But those conversations are hard. No matter what, like you feel insulted with, or like that this person, you know, just violated that trust, like it's still a person that's right in front of you.
Totally.
And I'm a person that believes that you should have as much honor with ending a relationship as you do with starting it.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in those moments, even if tensions are high or feelings are hot, like still remaining and understanding that you may not agree with what they did. You might actually be very upset and mad about the fact that they did what they did. But at the end of the day, like they are human in front of you, and you can treat that situation with as much honor and coolness as you did the day that you shook their hand to start employment in your practice. But in other situations, unfortunately, I didn't get even an opportunity to have like an agreeable end. I've been in situations where I have asked team for feedback. I have asked team to share with me things that are going on, and my team, like they don't owe me anything to share with me about their personal life. Right. And so sometimes there are things going on in their lives that I have no privy or basis to understand, but I start to see these breakdowns. And so I'm trying to understand what's going on, or, you know, see if I can, you know, is there anything in the feedback box in the back of the office that like I've missed or I haven't seen. But if someone's personal life starts leaking into their presence as an employee, and that starts to break down their consistency, their accountability, their being able to be present for other team members that are relying on them to get their work done so that they can get their work done. Otherwise, my other team members start picking up slack for what's not being done. If that perspective and lens of what's going on in their personal life is clouding the way that they receive feedback, constructive feedback and helpful tips to like move forward and make sure that they're doing systems and procedures properly, and that becomes like personally offensive to them because they feel attacked in a situation that they wouldn't have felt necessarily personally attacked from, but it's just because of the weight of what else is going on in their life, those things start to add up. And if that person is not doing their own work to address what's going on, or not at least letting ourselves and the team in a little bit on what's happening, that their tank is a little full. So like have some maybe extra grace for them in the season, or we find another more productive way to discuss, you know, methods of improvement in the office if we're seeing things not flowing that way. Mm-hmm. How are we supposed to know? So then you have a team member that gets upset with you or your other team because of what's going on in their life, and then they're out. And you're like, I didn't expect it. I didn't know about it. Like, how was I going to address it? And then you can't address it out after the fact, because at that point, that team member has either soured themselves or soured the whole process along the way, just because they were clued into what was going on. And again, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer for that. That's just life that happens. And you don't always, as an employer or as fellow colleagues, get, you know, to see into the dark spots of that person's heart. But that has made it challenging. And especially when after the fact, you might hear about things or hear things from your other team members that you're like, wow, this was actually a situation that's been going on for a little bit. Maybe it could have been addressed differently, which would have produced a different outcome. I've had people like after the fact where I didn't even know like that they felt a certain way about something that I said or a way that I said something. And instead of addressing it with me, they just held on to it. And that created like an inner anger within them, or an inner, you know, bruise that just kind of continued to fester and fester and darken and darken. And eventually it was just, again, too late to do anything about. I've had team that just was not performing. Mm-hmm. And I felt like most of my job in leading them was trying to help them create their own time management and accountability. And at the end of the day, that's not actually my job. And so I found myself getting sour because I would spend my own time, because I truly wanted to see this team member thrive, creating systems and creating an outline and creating things, because that's what I've done for myself in my own life, and things that we all need to learn and skills that we all need to, cultivate. But me trying to do that was actually me mothering and just trying to fill something in myself that like I could fix this person or I could help guide them. And then what does that say about me and like my ability to be this awesome, amazing leader? Right. So there's a little bit of like that kind of wounding coming through of myself. And now through that process, this team member, it just continues to expose more and more and more how this team member does not have the tools developed yet to like really keep themselves on task, where there's just too many things that they've overcommitted in their life because maybe they're a people pleaser or they're trying to prove something to themselves that they can do it all, when truly at the end of the day, they just need to prioritize exactly what that looks like for them. And oftentimes you might get team members that come to you and are trying to ask you what they should do, because they don't have the perhaps self-awareness or the courage in that moment to actually speak out loud what it is that they know that they need. And they feel that it's easier if they can get you to tell them that they need to go now.
Yeah.
Those are the hardest situations for me, because I'm a believer of like, you design your own life. And you should do enough work to like really kind of start to cultivate what you want from your life and the design for your life. But some people are in the storm and they just don't have the capacity to do that. And so those are the hardest situations for me, because I don't want to tell you what to do. I can try and ask you the questions to help you get to the answer. But if you are coming to me and are like, I have this situation going on, I have this situation going on, I have this situation going on, and I just don't know what to do. Okay, how can I help you? I don't know. I just need to know what to do.
Yeah.
How do you answer a question like that? I mean, what would you even like? How do you say, I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I would do in that situation, or I would only tell you what I have done in those situations. But again, now you're blurring the lines between like a mentor and a person, or like a friend and another person, versus like a boss and an employee. And truly, at the end of the day, we're here to make a business run, and we can have fun and have a beautiful and amazing team culture while doing it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're still in a employee-employer relationship. And there are expectations that you both agreed to help move this project and this mission forward. And if those expectations aren't being met and it's not in alignment with where you are in your life anymore, it's all okay. You just gotta like have the courage to say, I gotta move on in my life. And something that I've had to learn is to figure out how to have more conviction with already starting to see that, and having those harder conversations sooner and actually addressing it sooner, versus just having an open-ended conversation or asking an open-ended question, hoping that that person will share. Because more often than not, people will say, I'm figuring it out. Or like, yep, I have a couple, weekends off and I really am just going to like self-care and do some things for myself and like be more present. And sometimes those situations come out positively, but oftentimes it's just the avoidance, procrastination process that happens within them. And now it's like, you could have started the hiring process or potentially had someone else come in there already that's ready to rock and roll and is appropriate for that season of life and that season of business, versus holding on so tightly to someone else that's just not present anymore.
It's amazing how you're talking about the human condition and humanity when it comes to leading people in mission and in a vision with your company, with your business, along with them, and understanding that they have a life outside of your business, and they have crap that they have maybe be one of their biggest gifts, but can also be their dark side of their life, And so it's wild how that itself, like I pride myself on being a very gracious individual. I think I'm a great boss. I think people love working for me overall. And like, I think I'm very different than a lot of other bosses as well, because I'm not quick to fire. I'm definitely not one of those people that's like the minute that you think that somebody needs to be fired, that they need to be fired yesterday type of thing. I'm definitely not that type of an individual. And because I believe that the human in front of me I have the opportunity to give them grace and be able to have the opportunity to be able to ask some questions, have a process in place to be able to invite them into that journey and get online again, type of a thing. However, if they still don't meet up with that, obviously we will transition things on. I think one of the other things as you were talking to, it made me think about, I had a journey in this where I had really, really high expectations for my team when hiring them, where I basically felt like I wanted them to be an office manager, operations manager, but I hired for a entry-level position. And in that space, my expectation was like, you need to be here, but at the end of the day, they are only here. And so we had some like cross in there a little bit where it's like, are they truly capable of what I'm expecting them for? And also like what the position is set up to do. And also at the same time, am I expecting them to love and serve when they are humanly not capable of doing that? Like truly just questions I've had to ask myself along the way for certain people and individuals as well. And sometimes the answer honestly may be no. However, that also, it may not necessarily mean that they're not capable of doing what they are in your office and still serve a purpose and still serve a place for that specific role. But they just may not be the one that like majorly is this like quote unquote type A personality or like this A player that everybody likes to talk about that may be more of a B player, that type of thing. So I think also navigating and some of those expectations for what you have for team and having that be very clear, but making sure that your level of expectation for your people is also in alignment with who you desire them to be and that you're having those clear communications versus, again, you're hiring somebody to answer the phone, but yet at the same time, they've never had any skill set for understanding how to have a 30,000 foot view, but yet you want them to like, and then you're getting mad at them for not doing the job. It's like, how would they have the capacity to do that if they're not even aware of that? Right. So like, having that understanding of who you're hiring, who you're coming in alignment with too, I think is incredibly important to be able to also make educated decisions about when you do need to transition somebody out as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like I navigated more of situations like that, even just with like part-time employees. And then also like I'm very close to Palmer and Proximity, the Cairo College. And I beautifully had some incredible students come in and out of my doors, but they're definitely, I've had to navigate the difference between a student employee and a student that's really should just be here to shadow. And like enjoy and learn and grow through that process. And so the biggest thing I think that comes down to, regardless of if you're part-time, if you're full-time, if you have other things going on in your life, I mean, it doesn't even just have to look like school. We've had people that have had like traumas in their life along the way. We've had people that have had other part-time jobs and passions that they've loved along the way. Just a lack of clear expectations, a lack of a very clear and directive onboarding process really can create situations, especially early on, that snowball into bigger problems later. And one of the things that I feel kind of brings this in with like some of the culture side of things is when you also have employers that do their inner work and that care about the human being in front of them and care about having a positive team culture that's very, very attractive to potential employees who have come from very toxic work experiences or very toxic other things in their life. And the beauty in that is that, yes, oh my gosh, you might do this interview or see this place and see how this team runs and this culture and see that it's this beautiful thing and be like, my gosh, I want to be a part of that so bad. Yet they haven't quite done the work to process through the experiences that they've had. And so they're looking to heal in your team culture. And that can be an incredible process. And that person can truly grow tremendously through that. But if they don't have the awareness of that in the process, that can very quickly turn into them bringing in their toxic stuff from prior work experiences, whether they were a result of it, a contributor to it or not. And so just even getting more intentional with the hiring process and asking intentional questions about their prior work experiences and really listening between the sentences and between the words of what someone is saying. We've done interviews where people are like, we loved your website. We loved your Instagram. We've been in the practice, or we can see the way your team runs, because they came 15 minutes before their interview. So it wasn't the end of a shift yet. And so they're just in the ambiance and they're in that experience and they love it, right? And so you start asking them questions about their most challenging responsibilities at prior jobs, or if they ever had a conflict of interest or disagreement with a higher up at a prior work experience, or what was their level of teamwork that was disappointing there? What was the level of teamwork that was really cohesive and exciting there? And you start to hear that there maybe were these situations with this particular team member and someone else on their team that was having a problem with them, or that, they didn't like the way their manager did something and they told them about it, and the manager kind of off put it or let it go, and how they felt super disrespected by that or something else. And you're starting to hear that there are bits and pieces of what this potential employee is saying that actually speaks more about that potential employee than the perhaps environment that they were in. Mm-hmm. And so you have to you just have to know, it's so hard. You have to have more self-awareness. So you have to go to those tough spaces within yourself to learn about that for you, to be able to start to see those signs as someone else is going through their own journey with that. And then make a very conscientious decision about whether or not you want that person to process that in a business, right? If you have enough employees and you're looking for someone else, but it's not a make or break body, that if you notice that they're gone or that they're not performing well, that it really affects the rest of the business's running, that's probably then not a situation where you want someone who's processing their stuff in your practice. But if you have a large enough team and maybe there's someone that's going to be part-time or through the process and it's you can work with it, I don't know. Then again, you just have to be very, just particular and picky about what you invite into your team culture and practice as well. And if you do have parts of yourself that you and I have had to work through, and not knowing that as we obviously in our business help facilitate healing in others, that when we hire employees, they're not, while we take care of our employees and offer them chiropractic care as a perk of being an employee in the practice, that also now they're coming in not as a service, and that you're hired for them like a practice member hires you to help them facilitate healing, but that this employee that you're actually hiring them to serve you and your people, that it doesn't become a sticky situation like that. That's one of the biggest things that I have been encouraged to grow through from our personal coach as well. And just recognizing things within myself, and obviously people that really are attracted to that culture, is there a reason? And making sure that, they are also presenting as, healthy human beings, knowing that we all have room to grow. But there's definitely a difference between someone who's in the storm.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing how attractive that can be, right? Especially if you are in your own storm, or if you're in your own place and you're not aware of that. It's amazing how attractive that type of person is, because it gives you this... your ego is going to search for it, because it gives you this place where I'm going to help them. I'm going to save them. I'm going to fix them, or whatever it may be. It is wild how freaking attractive that type of individual can be. And 100% I've had to navigate that in especially my early years of practice. I've said, it's wild how it's almost I looked for it. I looked for people that were really in, quote unquote, in tune with themselves, or in tune with their personal journey. And even though they may have been in tune, there was still a lot of bleeding that was happening in their life, because they were just so in tune, right? So they were already in that journey, but it's cool. They can go through that journey, and we'll invite them into ours, but then they just came and bled into our business, our culture, everything like that. And also, not for anything. I mean, I freaking learned a lot from it, right? And you have too, so it's in that place, we can't go back, and I would never choose to go back, because life happens for us. And at the end of the day, I know that I'm the leader now because I've journeyed through that. And so honestly, for anybody that's listening to this that is going through their own process and having people on your team, one of the things I would invite you into, if you have tension in your team and you have a culture that's you feel like you want it to be up here, but your team is not leveling up to that, I would really invite you to get curious about yourself. And what are some of the things that you as a leader are doing that are creating space for others to either take advantage or manipulate, or where you're maybe trying to caretake, or you're trying to mother, or you're trying to fix something, and would really give you some opportunity just to dig deeper than just, they're not the right fit, I'm going to fire them. Doesn't mean they may not be the right fit and you need to fire them. Like don't hear us say that. They may just truly not be the right fit and you need to let them go because they're not in alignment with where you are going and what your business is doing. And so at the end of the day, like, you got to make that decision for yourself. But a lot of times, at least I've come to find, if you can clear the mud away, then those decisions become a lot easier. But it takes the work to clear the mud away first before those decisions can become a lot more clear and a lot more just, it's a business. At the end of the day, it's a business and you got to make sure that your business is taken care of. It's not personal. You know?
Totally. And having some standards around that.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're not going to be able to predict every situation. And even something with as simple as like a situation where someone requires, time off or request time off. And it's like not given within the parameters of when you like that ahead notification so that you can block the schedule or like make other accommodations or get coverage or whatever. The examples that when you blur your lines or show leniency to certain team or provide space for that, what that shows other team members and what that can actually leak or create a leak in the boat of your team culture and what that could represent. So like there's always room for grace. And when you work with humans and alongside of humans and in life, like it's not always predictable and it's certainly not always black and white. But sometimes, even for myself, I've given grace in a situation where actually, if I reflect back, that was trying to say more about myself and wanting that person to like me for giving grace to them than actually creating a standard that's important for our business to operate and run and should be upheld by all of the team members regardless.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had to navigate that too. And I've done it now because especially when you go from a place of just you as the one that's making those decisions, you have to empower your leadership team and whoever that person is in charge of that to also have that know-how. Yeah. Because again, at the end of the day, it is a business and there are certain things that need to make sure that things are running and that you're moving forward. And if they don't have the understanding, they're only going to continue to come back to you to also make that decision. And that doesn't necessarily always have to happen. So is there anything else that you would love to leave our people with to invite them to consider if they were looking at transitioning somebody off of their team and out of their mission and vision?
One, just keep true to your core values, keep true to your team handbook, keep true to the agreement that you made when you walked into quote unquote contract with that employee and that person in front of you. If there's a clear black and white situation, you kind of just you don't have a choice. You have to move forward for the sake of yourself, for the sake of your team, and for the sake of that employee, and for the sake of keeping standard and boundaries around certain situations. However, if there is a black and white, if it is a more gray situation and there's a little blurriness between that lines, not being afraid to have the hard conversations and just saying, hey, I've been noticing this. What do you think? And just being able to open space. And that person's either going to meet you in that conversation or they're not. And sometimes just that process of itself is going to show you what you need to do. If they do meet you in that space, then you can create parameters. Dr. Sara's alluded to this. We've shared this in other episodes, creating like maybe a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day check-in process to see if that team member can level up to the performance that they need to and the accountability that they're supposed to. And if they don't, again, you're creating a clear-cut understanding. So it's not a sticky like, hey, we need to part ways conversation, but it's kind of expected that that person and you already know a little bit like what's coming.
Yeah.
If it is a little bit more gray than even that, just having the grace and the understanding to, one, ask yourself the questions to make sure that you're actually leading from a place of authenticity and true empowerment versus trying to fix something within yourself along that way and along that process. Investing in mentors and other people that can help you also perhaps see something that you are not because you're in the midst of it, and being able to talk through that with someone that's, one, and very importantly, not on your team, unless they are in a position of leadership. And so you guys are leading that team together, or you've empowered them and to be a, mentor leader to that employee, but also just processing and understanding how you're operating in that situation, if you're operating healthily in that situation, or from like an emotionally unhealthy heart space from that situation. And then just, again, knowing that if it is the time to let that person go, that there is so much more beauty and so much more space open now for a new opportunity and a new energy to come into that space that could blow your mind away in the way that they're going to operate and take over that role and have ownership, have honor, and have excitement for that position and that opportunity. And if you do get to grow with an employee from it, I'll tell you something, like when I've had to have hard conversations with employees and we've come through on the other side, we're so much closer for it. And we're so much stronger and so much more on mission as a team together, because like you're not going to have a sunshine and rainbows team all the time in conversations and business. It just is, you're just not. But being able to go into those places so that you can continue to fortify the bonds and the mission that you have, because you keep those core values and everything up at the front, like people also love that too. And they love having a person that can help them lead through that, and they get to grow through that, because regardless if they're going to stay with you forever or not, they've actually learned something about themselves and have grown as an employee in that workspace.
Yeah. I have a saying that if I hire someone and they leave a better human being than they did when they first started, I've done my job.
Absolutely.
You know? And so, y'all, if you have enjoyed this episode, I would love, and we'd be so honored if you would subscribe to our show. Please rate us, follow us. It helps us a ton. We have enjoyed getting to talk to you. I know this is not always the easiest conversation when it comes to transitioning people out of your company, but it's beautiful and it's necessary at the same time. So we look forward to talking to you guys next time, and we'll see you then.
Bye.